Brian Lawton from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Brian, in terms of the scouting combine, I mean, you guys have your scouts deployed all around the world, keeping an eye for the best talent available. It's all kind of gathered here now for a different sort of inspection. Just how much stock do you and your staff put into something like this?
Well, obviously how they perform on the ice is still the biggest percentage of our evaluation process. But this is critical. You know, is to watch the kids do some off-ice training, some off-ice testing, so to speak, to have a chance to sit down with them and interview them for, you know, albeit 20 minutes. I have found it very helpful. I'm new here to this process, but it's really been enlightening.
You know, you almost take a step back, having been through a process like this as a player so many years ago. Is it amazing to see these players and maybe just how polished and the conditioning that you see these guys coming through at this stage?
Well, it really is. First off, the evolution of how this has developed and evolved over the years it's enormous, and it's impressive now. Central Scouting is doing a great job. As far as the group of players, I said it to our scouts the other night. I said, geez, guys, you know, I'm looking around the room and we have a very experienced staff that's been here for years, and I had to ask them, is this typical? And every single one of them said, absolutely not. This is an outstandingly impressive group of young men.
Pretty good sense that there's a lot of depth to be had in this draft?
I really think so. I really think so. It's just we interviewed, you know, a large percentage of the total number of players here, and I would say less than 3% really didn't show well. So that's a pretty insignificant number when you think about it. You can tell with some of the kids that have been a little bit more star prodigies, so to speak, certainly have been involved with the TSNs for a number of years where they're at, and they're at a very high level. But in general, a very impressive group of kids.
How about the big three that you had a chance to sit down and dine with earlier this week, and Duchesne, Tavares, and Hedman, your impressions of what you came across this week?
You know what? All those kids have been excellent. There's no flaws. You can either say they're well coached or they're great kids. I would surmise that they're all great kids, quite frankly. I don't think you can coach your way through that amount of time with people.
I'm guessing you got to like your spot, number 2, right now. You got to be sitting pretty at that one.
We're certainly, we didn't enjoy getting there, but now that we're here and we're in the off season, it's a very desirable place to be. We realize that. You know, we're certainly satisfied with where we're at right now.
Now, is there a sense that you'd be open to moving that pick, or is that something that, is there a lot of phone calls getting made on your?
You know, I don't have a baseline, as we were discussing earlier, to go off of that, but there's certainly been some interest, and I would only continue to expect that there would be a lot more.
There seems to be one general manager here in the Toronto area that seems to be saying that they're hopefully trying to make some moves. There's been some rumors. Any sort of talk with the Toronto manager?
I think that's a secret, and I don't think anybody's aware of that. No, obviously Brian made his feelings be known, and him and I have discussed that. You know, not so much about actually doing a deal, just about the philosophy of his making his feelings be known, which is certainly well within his right. But at the end of the day, there's not much you can say about that. I'm worried about the Tampa Bay Lightning and what we're doing and how we're going to get better and how we're going to put a product on the ice that our fans will be proud of and that our ownership will be proud of.
Is there a sense of which direction you're looking for, or do you just try to approach it as best player available for this draft?
Well, you know, everybody says best player, and I think that's so generic. There's more analysis that goes into it than that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, of course, you want to select the best player, but there's a lot of variables. You need to really do your due diligence on the individuals, of course, but you also need to internally reflect on your team, where you're at, where you're going to be, project when the players are going to be available, and have a strategy for the overall draft. It's not just for, in our case, the number 2 pick. It's for what are we trying to accomplish at the beginning stages of June 26th.
Let me ask you this, and we've talked about, so many kids have talked about the idea over the years of, you know, the questions that kind of catch them off guard when they one-on-one meetings. Are you a fan of throwing the odd curveball out to the kids?
I do. I think every year we'll come up with one new one. We had a couple of, you know, again, I'm new to the process, but these are questions that I've been interviewing people for a long time for jobs and in business, obviously, and I have some doozies that I ask people time and time again, and we had some fun with it, and the kids were great with it, but we do have a purpose for it. We do have a reason. There's no necessarily right answer to some of the questions that we asked, but it is telling to us on some things that are important to us as an organization.
Can you give us an example of a quirky question?
One quirky question that we asked this year was, if you could be anybody, fact or fiction, in the world or throughout history, who would it be and why?
And best answer, without saying, I guess, the player's name?
The best answer, unequivocally, was Winston Churchill, because he was a great leader in a time of crisis. It was it was an answer that you might typically get from a 35-year-old, not a 17 or 18-year-old. And I don't want to say who that was, but they know who they were. And that was by far the most impressive answer. You hear other things that are a little bit more related to age. I'd like to be Superman or something like that. So, that's just a little quirky one. We want the kids to relax and, not feel like you're being interrogated.
Well, okay. To avoid you not feeling like you're being interrogated,
I am being
who would be your fact or fictional character if you could be anyone?
Interestingly enough, my answer is Winston Churchill. So for me, I was kind of, the guys were giving me a hard time. They said, "You look shocked." I said, "Well, that's what I would say. Number one for me would be Teddy Roosevelt or would be Winston Churchill." So
I can see where you ranked it as the best answer then. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure.